Well, good afternoon. It's 4:30. It's the 18th of March, 2024. Welcome to Kempsey Shire Council's public forum. Its purpose is to allow members of the public to express their views on particular items on tomorrow's council meeting agenda. My fellow councillors and I welcome and thank today's presenters for taking the time and effort to be here. I remind people that this meeting is being webcast on YouTube with audio and vision. A recording of the meeting is available on the internet and is required to be available for 12 months. Such is the march of innovations. My watch just tried to broadcast the YouTube to me. Didn't know they could do that. Private recordings, including taking photographs by members of the public gallery, are not allowed. This ruling is to maintain the integrity of the meeting proceedings. Would you all please ensure devices like mobile phones are in silent mode? On behalf of the Council, I welcome all people into the public gallery and observing live on the internet to this public forum. I acknowledge that this meeting is on Dunghutti land, and we pay respects to elders past and present, and we wish the future ones are coming along well. We also welcome any other Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people with us. I now call for any conflicts of interest declarations from councillors or staff.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, declare a significant pecuniary interest in relation to item 12.4 as it relates to my interim performance agreement, and I will leave the chamber.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Wyatt.
Yeah, just declare a conflict of interest with item 10.9 around the property issue. It's when I read these business papers, I realised that I know the person, so non-pecuniary, non-significant conflict of interest. How would you like me to manage that? I just know the person through work.
It's up to you, but you can stay if you want, if it's a non-pecuniary, non-significant, and the usual practice is that councillors stay at that point.
Okay, thanks.
Attending the public forum are councillors.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't see your light.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I apologise, Councillor Saul.
No,
Councillor Saul, please.
A bit late, actually putting my light on. Mr. Mayor, I wish to do two items, if I may, if your indulgence. 9.1, the lack of traffic minutes, and 12.3, the land acquisition. The reason being I have a business in the CDB of Kempsey.
Okay, these are non-pecuniary, non-significant?
Yeah.
Both of them. Thank you, Councillor Saul. Any further ones? There's none. Thank you. I will now acknowledge the councillors that are attending and the staff. So attending the public forum are councillors Kenny Ring, Councillor Alexandra Wyatt, and on the male side of the chamber, Councillor Simon Ferguson, Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Scott Butterfield, and Councillor Anthony Patterson. We have an apology from Councillor Kerry Riddington, who cannot be here with us this afternoon. Our council staff in attendance. Oh, I apologise. Councillor Bain is online and observing and participating. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. So staff attending is Mr. Craig Milburn, the General Manager, Mr. Michael Jackson, Director of Operations and Planning, Mr. Wes Trotter, Director of Utilities, Mr. Steve Mitchell, Director of Corporate and Commercial, Mr. Daniel Thorogood, Group Manager, Governance and Information Services. I'll now ask the General Manager, Mr. Craig Milburn, to outline the guidelines for this public forum, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per Council's Code of Meeting Practice, each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to address Council. This time will be strictly enforced by the Chairperson. Speakers of public forums must not digress from the item on the agenda of the Council's meeting they have applied to address the Council on. If a speaker digresses to irrelevant matters, the Chairperson is to direct the speaker not to do so If the speaker fails to observe a direction from the chairperson, the speaker will not be further heard. A councillor, including the chairperson, may, through the chairperson, ask questions of a speaker following an address at a public forum. Questions put to a speaker must be direct, succinct, and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer on the question put to them. That if they choose to answer, the speakers, each question is limited to 1 minute. Speakers at public forums cannot ask questions of council, councillors, or council staff. When addressing the council, speakers at the public forum must comply with this code and other relevant codes and policies and procedures of council. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the council's code of conduct, or making other potentially defamatory statements. If the chairperson considers that the speaker of the public forum has engaged in conduct of this type, the chairperson may request the person to refrain from inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the speaker fails to comply with the chairperson's request, the chairperson may immediately require the person to stop speaking.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. We have 7 speakers today. Again, I remind all speakers that you may be wanting to ask you some questions on your presentation. These questions must only be on your presentation and succinct as just outlined by the General Manager. And these questions will be respectful and on the information you have presented. I'll rule out of order any other questions. Speakers do not have to answer any questions put to them if they so decide as just outlined. I'll now ask our first speaker, Julie Coburn, to come forward, please. She's speaking for agenda item 10.2, planning proposal, KLEP 2013 housekeeping amendment, South West Rocks building heights. Thank you, Ms. Coburn.
Okay. Yes, so I'd like to speak in favour of agenda item 10.2, and these sentiments are also supported by various community groups such as Voices of South West Rocks Community Incorporated and Kempsey Shire Ratepayers Association. Firstly, I would like to thank Council for
Thank you.
considering the concerns raised by the community in regards to future development within the area of South West Rocks, in particular height limits coming into question from such developments. This also reflects the resolutions made in the October 23 meeting to submit the planning proposal to end height limits to the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces for gateway consideration, which has since been approved on the 13th of November 23. The completion of this proposal by the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure is expected by the 13th of May 24. The North Coast Regional Plan anticipates significant growth in the Kempsey Shire by 2036. The KSC Local Growth Management Strategy projects an increase in population of over 5,000, of which 1,500 plus, or about 56.7%, will be located in South West Rocks. The subsequent South West Rocks structure plan was developed to achieve this potential. The vision for South West Rocks from the local government growth strategy is to maintain its picturesque coastal setting through the management of development height, scale and density, and protection of significant vegetation and key scenic view corridors. It is one of the key coastal lifestyle and tourism townships for Kempsey Shire, providing a range of housing densities and types supported by commercial, retail and industrial development appropriate for the scale of the township. South West Rocks is an important tourism destination, and maintaining a height limit to the CBD in particular will continue to make the area a major attractor to the town through its direct connection to the coast. It's so important that this area maintains its unique character, which is what attracts so many people to return to it year after year. Whilst the community in general supports the growth of the town, it's essential to remember the reasons why people choose to visit and live there. There is an overwhelming sense of nostalgia to return to a place where you and your family have gathered over many generations to enjoy the easy, uncluttered and accessible town and coastline. The South West Rocks community has a strong connection to the town's maritime history, Aboriginal heritage and cultural heritage, and the relaxed coastal village atmosphere, as well as protecting its unique environmental areas, which are home to many species of flora and fauna. These things are evident in the streets, public spaces and surrounds, where often kangaroos, koalas, echidnas and many other native animals and birds share that space with us. There are many larger centres nearby where visitors can go to if they wish to have that type of holiday experience or be closer to a greater selection of businesses and hospitality outlets. South West Rocks needs to remain an individual town where future development can nestle in amongst the already established residential and commercial areas. Regulated building heights will help to ensure good design to complement what already exists without damaging or irreversibly changing natural and cultural environments which can never be returned once gone. This is truly important to the community to ensure that future generations can also see and enjoy these spaces. This will also align with the Connecting with Country framework as a significant part of the traditional people's connection to this place. The implementation of regulatory building heights, particularly on land within the coastal environment area and coastal use area, along with the land adjacent and adjoining coastal wetlands, will assist in ensuring more intensive development is located away from these sensitive areas. There is also the identified coastal vulnerability area, which can now be protected by the amended building heights to minimise any impact on people and property. It should also be noted that South West Rocks contains a large portion of underutilised R3 medium residential zone land and R1 general residential land yet to be developed. The development of this R1 and R3 zoned land can deliver dwelling targets projected for South West Rocks, and the introduction of building height limits subject to this planning proposal will not result in losses in potential housing in the area. In conclusion, the developed South West Structures Plan's aim is to provide a planning approach that supports the community's long-term vision for that town. It supports revitalisation to existing commercial centres and gives greater certainty to the community for future development of that area.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coburn.
No problem.
Do we have any questions, please? From councillors? Councillor Wyatt, thank you.
That was very good. Thanks for putting that together. It's very succinct, covered all the issues. I just wanted to ask a question. We often get pushback. There is often pushback about anti-development that talks about something against development is anti-development. Can you just confirm that your comments, can you confirm that your comments and your presentation here is not about anti-development, it is about compatible and sympathetic and sustainable or regenerative development within South West Rocks?
100%. We're not against any type of development. Development's required. We need more residential land, and we need it in that medium residential land, as well as the traditional land parcels that can be operated. I think the key point here is the community's true desire to be able to maintain the uniqueness of South West Rocks and not have large, sort of more high density style buildings, particularly nestling right along that coastal strip. So there's always that clear view to be able to see out to the ocean, and particularly protecting those wetlands and those really sensitive environmental areas. And not to mention the trees and just the loss of normal habitat that will happen with large developments, but 100%.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'd like to ask very quickly, you see any dangers coming from restricting the heights, or it's all positive for South West Rocks?
I don't see any dangers. When you talk to the local business owners, particularly in the CBD areas, and those other identified areas where you already have existing commercial premises, the feeling is that that 11-metre height limit, which will be a 3-storey building, and that doesn't include possible underground parking, which will also create more parking space underneath, that it will nestle in with what is actually there to maintain that very relaxed, and as I said, that real nostalgic feel that South West Rocks has. As far as the medium densities go, I think the 2-storey height limit, again, fits in very well with what already exists there, and will still allow, I really hope, some cheaper housing options for newer families and newer generations coming through. And I think the community is very passionate about retaining those restrictions.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't have any other questions for you at this time, but thank you very much, Ms. Coburn.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Colin Ryan, and he's speaking for item 10.3, Crescent Head Foreshore Community Advisory Group, Terms of Reference and Expression of Interest. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. We need the microphone on. A little bit of trick there. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I speak in favour of the motion. 1,286 people throwing their support behind Crescent Head Country Club. Receiving a new 21-year lease needs little added. This number is more than the population of Crescent Head and shows how strongly the community feel about Crescent Head Golf Course and tennis courts. The new 21-year lease needs to be fair and reasonable, as indicated. The country club has invested heavily in the golf course, improving the site and meeting the expectations of the community. 520,000 litres of underground water has been built at considerable cost, providing the necessary base to irrigate the golf course. This will improve the quality of the site and further beautify Australia's only accredited 6-hole golf course. By Crescent Head Country Club having its own water resource, we have the necessary resources and tools to adapt and meet future needs. The system has been designed so that we can accept effluent or grey water from council when their sewage works and systems are upgraded, future-proofing the golf course. The water irrigation and other works cost approximately $2 million, with $100,000 coming from the New South Wales state government, $1.3 million from federal, and the remaining $600,000 from the club. The irrigation underground tank component cost approximately $700,000 of overall works. Crescent Head Country Club is also renewing the tennis clubhouse and greenkeeper shed, upgrades to the tennis precinct are costing around $700,000, $200,000 from the state government, $50,000 from Kempsey Shire Council, and the other $450,000 from Crescent Head Country Club. The tennis precinct allows for full disability access. Inclusion is something we pride ourselves on at Crescent Head Country Club. The investment into Crescent Head Golf Course has already come from the New South Wales state government, the Australian federal government, and has been committed to by Kempsey Shire Council. It has been tremendous to see that all three levels of government have recognised the importance of Crescent Head Golf Course and work collaboratively with Crescent Head Country Club for the wider community benefit. Crescent Head Country Club has already committed over $1 million to the golf course, as already indicated, and we plan to further improve the golf course. Furthermore, we will not fence the site. We will continue to keep the course in community hands, being utilised by the local school, surfers, walkers and others. We think a fair and reasonable rent would take these factors into consideration, coupled with the fact that it would cost in excess of $100,000 per annum just to mow and maintain the site. In reality, Crescent Head Country Club is saving Kempsey Shire Council money, providing a valuable community asset, providing green space, sustainable stewardship, sport, community inclusion, physical activity, recreation, and promoting a healthy lifestyle. Crescent Head Country Club is all about sustainability, inclusion, and community. It is sensible to move the golf course lease away from the community advisory group. The golf course lease has already undergone 8 years of consultation, and the community have overwhelmingly expressed their position. The community would like Crescent Head Country Club to be granted a 21-year lease on a fair and reasonable basis.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, sorry, you keep going. My mistake. It wasn't the end. And
Oh, that's
That was a
okay.
1 minute.
I'll just add to that.
Sorry.
I've basically finished, but I'd like to thank all those people wearing green today in support of Crescent Head Country Club and obtaining the golf course.
Absolutely nothing to do with Blake or St Patrick. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Do we have any questions, please, councillors? Councillor Ferguson has one, Mr.
Yeah,
Ryan.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your presentation. You mentioned other users of the green space there. I'm not a golfer myself, but I do have a young family.
Yep.
But we're always reluctant to like walk across the space or something because we didn't feel that that was somewhere you could walk. Could you outline how that could be utilised for family and walkers as well in with the golf course?
You're obviously not familiar with the site, sorry.
Yeah, I have been.
On a daily basis, people walk and use the course now. It's not unusual for people to be walking dogs across the course, surfers walking with their surfboards under their arms. The school does cross country, more than one school, I would add, in the Kempsey Shire does cross country on the site. Things like Christmas carols happen on the site. Weddings, there's all sorts of different activities get used on the site. If people need to totally close a course, they put in an application to the club. Otherwise, our golfers always work cohesively with anyone wanting to use the course. They will stop and delay hitting a shot, whatever, while somebody's walking across the course. I think it's a real community feel where everybody works in with one another and not one party is dominated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor Wyatt, please.
Yeah, I was just curious about that too, as I walk from the village across the golf course as well, but I wasn't actually sure whether that's legally allowed to do that. Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's why I said we would not fence the course. We would leave it open to the public. We're mindful that it's enjoyed by many, and we want people to enjoy the golf course. We are just the carers of what the community basically want. And I think if you put a fence around there and stop people walking on there, I don't think it'd be real popular at all. I think people like the way it currently is, and we propose to beautify it by having that extra water resource. In times of drought, we currently get the problem where it can brown right off. So it'll keep it green year round, keep it lush, keep it in pristine condition, which again is what the community are after, and the community like that it's open, accessible, and it's inclusive.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I'll have a quick question, if I may. Underneath the world-class mini golf course are the tanks for water.
Yep.
And you said there's a huge capacity. With that water now in place, is there a saving to the club in the water costs that you have because you've now got your own water supply?
There would be a saving to the club in the water cost, but there would also be a big cost in installing the irrigation required on the golf course, which is something the club would do once this lease is approved by council.
Okay.
That's something that is in the plans that we want to go ahead and do. So, yeah, in the short term, you would have the cost of the irrigation. We're also aware that the irrigation currently there are old asbestos pipes, which Wes Trotter could confirm, and it doesn't need replacing anyway, and that's something we'd like to do. But it's also better for the wider community that we are using that water rather than town water, obviously. It's better for the Rural Fire Brigade, the SES, and for homemakers in the area and everything, and council itself as well.
Thank you very much. And you also said you're going to spend $1 million or hope to spend $1 million improving the golf course. What sort of improvements are you hoping to have?
No. What I did say was we've already committed to spending $1 million in that. The tanks in the ground,
yep,
we've already spent $700,000 or $600,000 to $700,000 roughly in that area. The country club's already spent those funds, so that's already been implemented. And next we have the tennis precinct, which would be a new tennis clubhouse and a new greenkeeper shed. The tennis clubhouse will be built on level ground to the tennis court, so it's accessible by wheelchair. Currently, if you're in a wheelchair, you cannot access the tennis courts or the tennis clubhouse. They both have stairs. So the new building would have both on the same level, so a wheelchair could access the tennis clubhouse and the tennis courts. And that there will be another $400,000 committed to by the club.
Okay.
Again, that work will happen once the lease has been approved.
Thank you very much. Incentive for everyone to make sure it works. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And Councillor Butterfield has a question. Thanks, Councillor Butterfield.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ryan, for your presentation. It's very good. I've played quite a few rounds of golf around Crescent Head over the years, and quite often wondered with the amount of surfers and walkers walking on the course, if one was to get hit with a golf ball, who would actually be liable? Because you've just recently said that Alexander White, it's quite legal for people to walk back and forth while there's a game of golf on. Myself, I have had to wait for people to pass while hitting a ball, but sometimes too, when you come up from, I think it's the first, second, third, from the fourth up past the tennis court there, quite often you're hitting up over the hill and you can't see people walking across there, and it's been very close in time. So who would actually be liable if someone was to be hit with the ball?
It's the new lease, the same as the current lease. The insurance is borne by the country club. So if there was any problem, that is the problem from our end. It's not a liability of council, so you can be assured of that. And we do have insurances in place to cover that sort of unfortunate accident if it was to occur. I would have been manager at the country club 20 years this year, and we have always, for the last 20 years, had insurance, and we have never had an incident or a claim. So what you're speaking of is a possibility, but given history, it is also probably unlikely, but it's not to say it could not happen. But yeah, it's not something that would concern or be over-worrying for council, because the liability sits with the country club.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. You
All
have
right.
another question?
Thank you. I just
Councillor
want to
Butterfield?
commend you on the mini golf out there. It's great. Very nice. Thank you.
Is that a question?
No, it's just thanking you. No.
Can I answer that one?
Yes, it's a tough question. So I'll
Yeah.
let you answer it, please.
The mini golf is going great, and it is loved by the wider community. Again, because it is inclusive, one of the main features of it is that it is wheelchair accessible. We believe that it's the best course in Australia for disability access, and we've had groups already come from mental health and from disability, from multiple groups from Port Macquarie, also from Maxville. So it is really gaining traction amongst the disability wide community because it is accessible, and there's nothing else like it in Australia. And we're getting somewhere around, averaging around 100 people a day playing mini golf.
Thank you very much for that good news, and thank you for your presentation, Mr. Ryan. There's no
Thank
other
you.
questions. Thank you very much, and we'll
you.
move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Lindsay Kay. He's speaking against 10.7 road safety strategy. Thank you, Mr. Kay.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Several councillors have been negatively affected by the community response since November 2023. For any part that I have had in that, you all have my sincere apologies. Going forward, we all need to work together. It is unavoidable that councillors will find themselves at the business end, as you are collectively the point of contact between the community and the general manager who oversees the actual council staff. This makes you all extremely valuable assets to the community, and it's unfortunate in the extreme if the community reaction to ongoing issues leads any of you to become discouraged, especially if this means that you are no longer willing to represent your community. The community is here to help. We can make a start tomorrow by rejecting 10.07.1 road safety strategy. As a councillor, you are like the director of a business on a board of directors. You meet periodically to oversee the direct work of your CEO, the GM, who is entrusted with the running of the organisation on a day-to-day basis. Consequently, you are expected to be across the breadth of the operations of the organisation. The detail should be available, but is not required to make broad assessments. To this end, there is a tradition of providing executive summaries. These usually contain appraisals of salient facts and issues and a summary of responsibilities, timelines and costs. 10.7.1 does not have one. Like so much I have reviewed in the last 6 months, it is an unnecessarily opaque and overlong document that is not so much a strategy, the definition of a strategy being a plan of action designed to achieve a long-term purpose or overall aim, a master plan. It is more, in fact, a position paper. There are no costings, barely a hint of a time frame, and no responsibilities listed. There is not even an author listed. There is an author claimed partway through called Safe System Solutions. Whether they wrote some or all of it, it isn't clear. Even with the bar set below any reasonable standard, this does not go over it. I only have 5 minutes, so I'm not going to go into a comprehensive detail of the failings of this position paper. I will focus on the figure 8, the Integrated Planning and Reporting IPR framework. To the far left and at the start of the graphical picture is community engagement. As this is part of all IPR and apparently the starting point and key driver, it is crucial to get this right. There is no evidence that this was done in an effective manner. Only around 100 people responded. That is not statistically significant. That means any conclusions drawn from the limited data set available are suspect at best. That means there is no way to progress the cycle forward. On page 12, after glossing over this fatal deficiency, we read, collected feedback through relevant local stakeholders. Who are they? What was their input? Without this, there is no transparency, no accountability, and crucially, according to the philosophy, no community buy-in. Returning to figure 8, this shows a process running from the community plan to the road safety strategy to the delivery program, then to the operational plan. Presumably, at some point, the numbers and delivery framework will need to be inked in. Well, that's presuming there was a pencil there before, when in this case, there is nothing. So, for example, let us say the community felt that quick access to air ambulance services was the main and key focus for their road safety strategy. This comes at a substantial cost. At what point in time do the councillors make their determination on this cost item? This is a genuine dilemma. The community may once again have the expectations the process has established for them dashed. Only in this case is it a road safety strategy that aims in this case, it is a road safety strategy that aims for zero fatalities. As a remote rural community with large distances involved in the road traffic trauma gold now via New South Transport, such interventions may require these facilities. Page 30 is really a case of shake my head. There isn't community engagement. To jump into what it means in terms of developing a plan glosses over the fact that the whole process has been a failure. At some point, someone must ask the hard questions. Why is community engagement failing for our Shire Council? It can succeed. FIOKSC got over 9,000 points of engagement in November, and in around the last fortnight, 1,500 more. Why the seismic distance? They don't have to be. We don't have the resources of the Shire Council. I'll just quickly get to the very end. No, I won't. So thank you for your time, and please don't vote for it because we're here to help you, and you should throw it back.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, please, on the presentation?
Maybe, yeah, sure.
Councillor Wyatt, please.
So you recommend that we don't support it. What is your recommendation? I mean, to not support it, but then where do we go from here? And what kind of things would you like to see put in a plan that's not there? Or in any briefing that we may or may not have had that's not there?
Well, I could go into the detail of it. It'll take more than a minute. Most critically, all of the documentation that comes out of the council staff, which become the business papers, need to have appraisals. you shouldn't have to wade through. In this case, it's 40 pages for the original document, 60 pages for the PAM plan. I don't know how many for the bike plan. And then because then you're not given any direction, you would then have to look through all of the New South Wales and federal papers on transport safety to be fully informed about it. Now, that's a mountain of stuff for one item on your business papers for one meeting. It needs to be done better, and the only way it will be done better so you can be more effective is to throw them back when they're not done right. Now, I do have some suggestions for how we can improve road safety in the Shire, but I'm running out of time and I won't be able to get to them.
Thank you. Do you have another question now? Yes, you may ask a further question. I'm going to ask a question on road safety too. What do you think are the main things that are missing from this that would improve road safety in the Shire?
An actual plan, some suggestions, engagement with the community. Those are the main things that are missing from the plan. You can't go on a plan with 100 people. It's not statistically significant. And it means that if you're basing it on the community feedback, you don't have enough. You need to get more community feedback. So fundamentally, we need to find a way to engage with the community better. You have a whole community engagement strategy, but it's clearly not working, and it needs to be worked on. And if you want my honest opinion, the reason the community doesn't engage with this council is they don't trust it. They don't believe what comes out of the council. There's a long history of people saying you should do this and them being ignored. There are some examples I know of that are current where people can't get emails answered. And we're not talking about people like me, ratbags, who are asking hard questions at difficult times. And we're talking about people who want responses to DAs. This council is not trusted by the community. Until you fix that, you won't have the community engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Further question, Councillor Wyatt.
So there lie the problem is there's a trust issue and there's a lack of consultation issue. So one, that you have to work on the trust first. What will it take for council to what does council need to do in order to gain trust, your trust?
Well, my
Councillor
trust.
Wyatt, it has to do with this report.
Well, that's what he said. Okay. Oh, that's what he said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
My trust's probably hard to get, but I think a little bit of mea culpa, which is actually mentioned in the road safety strategy, where people admit to the fact that they're human and there have been failings in the past. You don't even have to admit to your failings within an organisation. You can just say, there have been mistakes in the past. We're really sorry for them. We want to move on. That'd be good. That'd probably be a place to start. And things that are likely to actually bring people on board. Like, for instance, it mentions a code of behaviour. It doesn't mention how it's going to get established and who's going to have input into it. But it mentions a partnership with the police. Well, perhaps if we had fines converted to driver education, that is something that's done in other jurisdictions. So instead of getting the fine or the points, you go to driver education. You could encourage dash cams. That would mean that people are more timid in being an arsehole on the road.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Don't have any further questions. Oh, yes, we do. Councillor Bain has a question for you, Mr. Kay.
Yeah, I noticed one of the proposals in there for increasing pedestrian and cyclist safety was increase in footpaths and cycleways. Now, a lot of people have spoken to me about the need for better footpaths, particularly around schools. Is that a strategy that you could support?
I'm sure it's a strategy that the community support. Whether I support it or not, it's basically immaterial.
Councillor Bain, further question?
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kay, very much for your presentation. We now move on to Mr. Andrew McGowan, who's speaking for 11.1, public forum, non-agenda items. And Mr. McGowan, thank you for being here today, and with your companion animals. It's welcome here in the chamber.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the work you've done. Yeah, everyone's going to whinge about everything when you're on council, aren't they? Hey, but thanks for doing what you've done. Just a correction, Mayor. They are my assistance animals. Companion animal is any animal that's owned by a person that's registered to a council. These are medical devices.
Okay.
It's just like a wheelchair. I wouldn't be asked to leave a wheelchair outside, and I appreciate not being asked to leave my medical devices outside.
Okay, I apologise for getting
No,
it
no,
wrong.
no. It's all about education.
Yeah, thank
And that's
you.
one of the things that I want to talk about is that my family goes back to the 1850s. I love this town. I don't live here all the time, but I do come back here. I train dogs now for people with disabilities. I advocate for people with disabilities. And when I'm in town, if there is a meeting on and there may be something pressing that's urgent for a quality of life for a person with a disability, it needs to be addressed at the next council meeting. And if I'm here, I'd like the opportunity to speak on that, where it may not be on the agenda, but it is very important for the quality of life. And we do have quite a high number of people with disabilities in our town. And as I said, I'm not based here, so it's opportune that when I'm here, if I have access to a council meeting, to be able to do that. To be able to access a council meeting is also important. Many people who have disabilities can't access the internet to lodge a form to access a council meeting. So we need assistance, and I'm talking about myself. I had assistance to put together my application to come here because when I rang council last year, the phone call wasn't returned and I was unable to speak at that council meeting. There's also an importance of transparency. If you want to build trust in the community, which was mentioned a moment ago by a councillor, being transparent as you possibly can. We have GIPA laws. People can find out information about employees. They can go, quite in depth as to what's available. But if everything's transparent, we don't have to do that. Hopefully I'm not going outside of but I spoke at a council meeting 4 years ago. I didn't ask for a motion, but a motion was made by a councillor. And the mayor seconded it, and she spoke to that motion. And things haven't changed 4 years later. I ain't got a lot more to say other than the need to be able to address council. You are a local government authority. You're given the authority of federal and state governments to look after this community. And that's all we're asking to do, that the people who live in your area with disabilities need a voice. And sometimes those people are afraid to speak up. Sometimes they can't speak up. They may not have a voice, or they may have been so traumatised by the experience in the council area, like having the police called on them for doing nothing wrong because of business calls, and an individual seems to be second. And people need a quality of life, and they're entitled to one. And being able to access council, these meetings, to raise these issues at the time that they arise is very important. So thank you very much for your time. It was a nice drive from Canberra.
I hope it wasn't too wet for you. Thank you. Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr. McGowan?
Yep.
Councillor Wyatt, thank you.
What was you said that you spoke to council 4 years ago?
Yep.
And you put up, because the notice of motion was put up, do you remember what that was about?
Yeah, it was about assistance animals. And the motion that was put forward was by Bruce Morris. Bruce put forward a motion to educate the businesses in the area of, and this is something I'm battling the federal government over, trying to get funding for an education system to express what the law is, to educate the people of Australia, both business people and people in the community. As I walked up here today, there were 3 little girls so excited to see my dogs, especially Precious Andy here, who's 13 days old, by the way, and emergency cesarean. Sorry, I lost track. And that was about educating businesses about access of assistance animals. There's only 2 places an assistance animal can't go. One is the operating theatre of a hospital, and the other one is the back of a butcher shop or an abattoir.
Thank you. No further questions. Oh, yes, Councillor Bain has a question, Mr. McGowan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. McGowan. My question would be, again, referring back to when you addressed council 4 years ago, because that was under a prior code of meeting practice when non-agenda items were allowed to be discussed. Do you feel that that was effective in raising an issue and motivating a change in practice?
Yeah, it was an opportunity to. The feedback I had was that the signage at beaches where it says no dogs, and again, mine are not dogs, they're medical devices under the legislation. 1992 National Disability Discrimination Act, Section 9 explains what an assistance animal is, trained for the person with the disability for a quality of life. Sections 54A points 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 go on to talk about the access that a dog has. And it's weird language, but it says the discriminator may. So somebody can question me and say, do you have proof that your animals are assistance animals? And I have more paperwork on them than I've got on myself. I've got a black folder there with all their accreditation, the letters from the doctors stating what my disabilities are. One of the misconceptions is, and thank you, Councillor, for your question, that dogs have to have jackets. That's not in the legislation because at its core, it's discriminatory. People don't know I've got a disability, but if my dog's got a jacket,
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Ring, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your presentation, you talked about inclusivity, and it takes a lot of, I guess, effort and privilege and ability to be able to get up and speak at a public forum. So in terms of raising issues with councillors, I think the public forum is one way, but do you feel like there could be other more inclusive ways of engaging?
Absolutely. I believe you're developing a disability inclusion plan. It's been in the works for 4 years. I'd like the opportunity to make a submission to that. I addressed Port Stephens Council on the 13th of February on this exact issue. And within 4 weeks, they came back to me and said, we're going to start educating people straight away. And as the signage needs to be replaced, we're going to address that. Because there are some beautiful new signs out at Crescent Head Beach, red ones, that say what area dogs can go. That's fine. But see, what I want is I want to be able to access those areas without anyone hassling me from the community saying, you can't have your dog's got to be on a lead, rah, 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 and then call the police. 26 times. I've had the police called on me for doing nothing wrong, never fined, never, right? I just want a quality of life. I didn't choose to be sexually abused at the age of 10, but I was. And I need my animals for my quality of life. That's all I'm asking. Just like you do. And thank you very much for your question. It's very thoughtful. But yeah, I'd love the opportunity to.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. And Councillor Ferguson has a question for you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McGowan. Is your primary concern education of the public or access to all areas, or is it just both?
It's education of council staff, first and foremost. I don't like it when rangers are telling people that my dogs are not assistance dogs. My dog sat on the lounge of the Prime Minister on Valentine's Day 2019 and kissed him. He had to grab hold of her. She was like on him like white on rice. That was Scott Morrison. So Scotty from marketing did get some tongue action one Valentine's Day, eh? So education of all, but the rangers are the one who are policing policy of council. So if they're called, they need to be aware of what the legislation is, what the federal legislation is. To be able to defend a person, if I'm in the right, they need to be able to say, no, Mr. McGowan's entitled to have his dogs here. He meets all the criteria. He's got all the paperwork, and they are different to a dog. They are a medical device for his quality of life. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Patterson. Just a quick point I'd like to make, Mr. McGowan. The actual item you're speaking on is about non-agenda items.
I understand.
You're addressing that. Do you see a wide range of non-agenda items that should be brought to councillors' attention? And is this the best way to do it? Is my second part of the question.
Well, communication's key to overcome any problem. And this seems to be a very important avenue for the community to do it. For a person, oh, terrorist, you've been trained early. 222 recommendations from the Royal Commission into Disabilities that cost $234.17 million. $80 million of that was wages. Came out 222 recommendations. One of those was a Minister for Disabilities. 5.7 million people, 20% of our population. We don't even have a Minister for Disability. We've got a Minister for NDIS.
I agree with you that these are important issues,
Yeah.
Mr. McGowan, but this is about presenting non-agenda items.
Yeah.
I'm asking,
Well,
are there other non-agenda items that you think are really important to come before councillors?
Yeah, I'm talking from my perspective, people with disabilities. We need to have a disability liaison officer at the council. That is somebody who's trained in dealing with people, and it's not about mobility. We've got more and more people returning from overseas who have fought and died for our country. Those who didn't come back wounded, PTSD. We got more assistance animals than ever. Okay. People need to be trained in dealing with people with PTSD in how to minimise the stress of raising issues, giving people an avenue, a clear voice for that. And sometimes a carer is needed to come along and speak. You know, I'm blessed that I have the ability to talk. And I've been given the opportunity to talk today. I really think that. And I hope I haven't gone too far off the point, but it is all about.
Well, you have partly gone off.
Oh, no,
we're getting the idea about disability, but we were talking about changing the code of meeting practice
Sure.
and bringing non-agenda items before councillors.
Sure.
Councillor Patterson, did you have your question you wanted now? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. McGowan. I was actually here in that council that you spoke at previously, and I think it was in relation to, there is a question here, it was in relation to, I think it was sleeping rough at night on
No.
on the
No.
possibility. Anyway.
No. It was about assistance animals.
Yeah. The local, state and federal governments all need to work together to address the issues that you've just been speaking on. Do you think that that has been happening? Do you think that that's a way, there's a way that
Councillor
councils
Patterson.
could?
Order, Councillor Patterson.
I'd like to answer that. I can.
Well,
my question's to him.
Councillor Patterson, order.
Okay.
We are talking about the address on non-agenda items, not his opinion on, and he's got very important things he wants to say, and I agree with what he's saying, but we need to talk about the notice of motion that's before us.
Yep.
So do you have a question on his idea about having non-agenda items in the code of meeting practice? Councillor Patterson? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards, Anthony, not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor again, I'll just clarify just in relation to the comment from Councillor Bain about the previous code of meeting practice. What actually happened, it was actually in May, the May Council meeting in 2019. Councillor Morris actually put forward a notice of motion in relation to what Mr. Gowan's talking about, and Mr. Gowan actually spoke to the notice of motion. It wasn't an item that came from the floor separate, it was actually through the normal process.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. There was only one under that previous regime, just adding it to everything, councillors. In the whole time I was on council, and Councillor Patterson, Saul might remember this, I can only remember one non-agenda item being addressed, which was the flies at Clybucca.
Thanks for that
at a house.
clarification.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Gowan. There's no further question, and thank you for travelling all this way and presenting today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mark Walker. He is speaking on 4.11.1 public forum non-agenda items. I thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do I follow that? Mr. Mayor, councillors, council staff, my fellow ratepayers and residents. I'm speaking in favour of the motion because I have a firm belief in the absolute necessity for transparent two-way communication between the governed and those doing the governing. I'm only too well aware, having seen it elsewhere, that enabling members of the public to speak on any topic that takes their fancy can indeed prove problematic. especially if the topic is neither relevant to the meeting or even relevant to council. For example, if a resident has a beef with the federal government, then perhaps not always obviously that beef needs to be taken up with the local MP rather than with council. But I note in the proposed motion that there are provisions for vetting both speakers and topics, as happened today for this public forum. So I'm comfortable that these existing filtering provisions will prevent anyone going too far off topic, and if they do, the Mayor has existing procedures at hand to call a halt or to insist that a speaker stay on topic or that they no longer be heard. When the previous council changed the then extant rules to prevent topics not already on the agenda being discussed, I was disconcerted. Was this a mechanism by which those governing sought to limit feedback from the governed? Or was it simply a pragmatic mechanism to remove from the agenda item irrelevant topics that would merely waste the time of council? Personally, I think it was a bit of both, but it was dressed up to appear as though it was simply a means to prevent unnecessary time wasting on topics not on the agenda, or on topics that the council or members of the council did not want to discuss for whatever reason. And I'm reminded of the first time I spoke in this place, when I had to ask the former mayor for permission to speak. After my speech, I was told in no uncertain terms that had the mayor known what I was going to say, I would not have been given permission to speak. So I understand what it means to be silenced, or perhaps being fair, to be threatened with silencing, and I deeply object to that. If any citizen, any resident, any ratepayer has an issue they believe should be raised with council, they should be afforded the right to do so. However uncomfortable, however awkward, however painful that may be. It is council's duty to sit and listen and hear the issues residents bring before them. I'm also reminded that in almost every other public forum or meeting of any public or private organisation, it is normal meeting practice to have an item on the agenda for other business. In other words, for business not already on the agenda. I note that the present council meeting agenda, or even the agenda for the public forum, does not have an item for other business, as most other organisations do. Council should not be concerned about too many speakers or speakers waffling on. We have the mechanisms to prevent that, especially given that we already have a very strictly applied 5-minute rule for speakers. There should be no reason at all why council should not indulge itself with a little more democracy rather than a little less. Because fundamentally, the reason we are here is to examine and further the process of democracy. Council itself is not the final arbiter. The people are the final arbiter, and council is only a representative body. The purpose of this forum is to enable the public to make representations to their representative body. If council is unwilling to engage with the public, even unwilling to listen to the public, how then can it claim to be legitimately representing the wishes, desires and concerns of the public? Some might say...
You had 1 minute to go. I apologise for interrupting you.
I knew that, Mr Mayor. That's why I continued. Some might say that people with concerns should write to council, but not everyone has the ability to do so. As my previous speaker pointed out, not everyone has the ability to do a lot of things in our society. So this forum remains pretty much the only way concerned citizens can directly bring those concerns to the attention of the council. We live in a democracy. Our representatives need to listen to us. This forum exists for that purpose. No topic relevant to council's deliberations should be off topic, restricted or in any way silenced. This motion goes to the very heart of the democratic process. The people need to be heard and council needs to listen. I urge all councillors to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Walker. Again, I apologise for interrupting you, as I did with the previous person. I shouldn't have done that. I make mistakes, surprisingly.
We're all human.
Yep. So I thank you. Do we have any questions, please, for Mr Walker? Speaker, councillors. Councillor Ring, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You said that this public forum would be the only way they could raise voice to issues. Can you give more reason behind that?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor Ring. Not everyone is capable of writing a submission to council. Not everyone is capable of putting pen to paper or even fingers to keyboards. As Mr. McGowan has pointed out, there are people with disabilities in our community who have way more issues than the average person, and even the average person struggles sometimes. This forum then becomes the last resort, the only reasonable place where concerns can be raised. If people have a concern they want to raise, this forum should exist for that purpose. Therefore, we should allow people to bring questions that perhaps aren't on the agenda to this forum, or change the procedures so there's an item for other business for which those items could be added to the agenda, provided, as now, the notification is provided to the General Manager beforehand.
Councillor Ring.
I guess in terms of being a large organisation that has plans set out potentially, or well, it does have plans out years ahead, what, like, if things are set, like, what is the rationale behind bringing up non-agenda items in terms of, like, if there's, well, yes, obviously.
We live in an unpredictable world. I can't predict what someone is going to want to bring to this chamber. It's going to happen when it happens. As Mr. In his case, he can only speak to this forum when he happens to be in town at the time a council meeting is on. There will be other reasons. Items that occur through the nature of the way our society interacts with each other occur out there that people have a concern about, and they need to bring it to council, to the authority that can action some positive action that they would like to see happen about that matter. It's no good going to the courts or going to the knocking on Kempsey's door. If it's a council matter, it's got to come here. Therefore, we need the availability of that function within this forum.
And there's, in terms of, you know, there's the Figure It Out group, there's Kempsey Ratepayers Association, things like that. There's no avenues through there to raise issues.
Not necessarily. That they may not know of those organisations. They may not have access to the internet to be able to find them. They may be intimidated by those. I don't know. But the point is simply getting something on the agenda is not an easy thing to do. And there are restrictions and hurdles and barriers in place that prevent some people from doing that. And some people then feel that this is the only place where they can actually address council or councillors.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butterfield has a question for you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you for your presentation. I've been sort of reading through it, and why I think it is, to a point, a good idea to be able to people come and speak at the public forum. With all the other, because you're sort of saying that people feel intimidated by other means, I would think quite a lot of people would feel intimidated standing up speaking in public. And also, if your disability is quite severe, I do think the other forms of contacting council would be more appropriate. And the other sort of thing, I suppose, is time. You know, there's quite a lot on the agendas when we come here normally. Maybe with those filters there, do you think that would be enough to filter people out, or subjects or topics out, or council have enough time to deal with the agenda at current?
I think so. I mean, I know in the motion itself there is provision there for the General Manager to refuse to accept someone bringing a non-agenda item, and I think that's perfectly appropriate. And especially there's also a provision in there, I think, for someone who's spoken previously on the same issue, not to bring the same subject to council, i.e. not wasting council's time any further. But there will be occasions when a subject occurs or a matter occurs that people wish to bring to council's attention and they don't feel comfortable doing it any other way. Fundamentally, the basis of my presentation is that we live in a democracy, and if there isn't a two-way communication, then we aren't living in a democracy.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, let's finish up. No one else seems to be wanting to ask you a question. The process of having an agenda enables members of the public to see what's coming, and if they want to contribute, they can. If unexpected business comes to council, it won't be on the agenda, but it will be in this the presentation. So, what's the consequence of action flowing from that presentation? What do you expect councillors to do with information that comes on a non-agenda item? You couldn't expect them to have a motion or a resolution in the council meeting where they are presented to, would you? You would have to wait further along. Is that how it works in your mind?
I wouldn't see that necessarily. It may be that that's the case, but as I have seen from in many other organisations that I've been in who have other business on their agenda, when the other business is raised in those forums, there's a call for other business, and if anyone's got other business, they raise their hand. The nature of the business is described, and the chair allows that person to speak on that subject. Now, as a result of them speaking on it, there may be then some action that needs to be taken, or it needs to be action by a committee or by a department head or whatever. It's the opportunity for the public to come to council and say, we've got a problem, you guys need to action something about it. Now, it may be that people bringing those things to council, it's the first time council's heard about it. So it's really good to have that two-way communication.
Right, thank you very much. So as a consequence of that, my follow-up question would be, would you expect the right, and it's not in this motion before us that's coming up tomorrow, or the recommendation, that there is an ability of councillors to say, we would like to hear more about this, and ask the General Manager to have a report to the next council meeting? Would that how it would work in your mind?
Well, that would certainly be one of the ways it could work. I mean, I know from other organisations I've been involved with, motions come from the floor. So people can, like in political organisations, for example, they can move a motion from the floor. Now, obviously, in this forum, in the council forum, we, the public, don't have the opportunity to do that. Council would have to do that, or a councillor would have to move a motion to investigate further, or request the General Manager instruct staff to move further forward with whatever the item was.
Big forum and question time.
Are we good?
Yes, we're good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Light for putting forward such a comprehensive notice of motion. And it demonstrates to the community that there is a willingness to begin a better process of open and honest engagement with us, and to put a greater value on the opinions and contributions that we can make. Elected members are responsible for planning the future of their communities and developing the strategies and policies to achieve those plans. Councillors need to demonstrate strategic vision and leadership by putting in place guiding principles, policies and local laws. A strategic focus ensures that council can plan for and meet the future of its community. The purpose of the public forum is to allow members of the public the opportunity to speak on an agenda item prior to the formal council meeting, where councillors will vote in favour or against such items. This is also a time for community members to go on public record with their views as a further and possible amendment to a written submission where a previously publicised survey or item of agenda may have changed. The current KSC Meeting Code Practice 2022 places restrictions on both the number of speakers on a topic and a time limit of 5 minutes to make a presentation. Now, in some instances, this may be more than suitable, but where there is a matter of high importance to the community at large, this becomes unrealistic and doesn't allow for enough engagement with the public at this time. This devalues the purpose of having a public forum in the first place and does not represent the values that a code of practice invites. There's also a provision made for only councillors to ask questions to speakers, with a right of return limited to 1 minute. The fact that a councillor has interest in gathering more information or clarification from a speaker should be welcomed and encouraged as a further opportunity to understand that person's perception and possibly the further perceptions from the broader community. Knowledge and understanding of the community's perspective is vital in making the council better represented, and there is to positively assist councillors in making their decisions. By further limiting speakers to only be allowed to address the literal agenda items does not show flexibility in how one issue may critically link to another. The reference to another item may be vital in putting that opinion or information into context and doesn't disseminate from the business of the meeting's purpose. Also, giving consideration to a further question time will have great value to both the community, councillors and council. Whilst there is the ability to contact council via a number of different channels, often this doesn't happen in a timely fashion and can create incredible frustration, and sometimes anger amongst the community who are looking for assistance or advice on matters that are of high value or importance to them. The ability to be able to submit a question or topic of discussion at regular intervals across the year would just be another opportunity to have a say. Not all of these submissions will be negative. Council does some amazing work for us, and people value the opportunity to openly talk about this as well. For some, just the chance to get something off their chest will ease unneeded stress, which also has great value. There's also many community members who have plenty of positive ideas and feedback, which will greatly assist council and councillors in doing the work that we need. The fundamental attributes of transparency, accountability, stewardship and integrity are not only the building blocks of effective, long-lasting local government management, but instill trust and confidence in the citizens councillors have been elected to serve. To be effective, council members need to understand the views of the people they represent. Communication is a two-way process. Council members provide information to the community about the policies and decisions of council, and the community relays its desires, concerns and opinions to the council through members. To represent both electors and the councils effectively, a council member needs to be a good communicator and keep in touch with the local community. The small group nature in local government councils creates a meetings environment where good relations, good behaviour, mutual respect and an appreciation of the diversity of views of others leads to a harmonious meetings and assists good decision making. Elected members need to each other to achieve their individual and collective goals, and community engagement is a critical path to this. The Act's principles establish that the primary accountability of a local government is to its community, and that the decisions of the local government must be made with regard to the benefit of the entire local government area. I strongly support the recommendation put to Council in this notice of motion to make amendments to the Meeting Code of Practice 2022 as per the points outlined by Councillor Wyatt. I also support the recommendation to draft public question time procedures by staff and allow a period of public consultation and further investigation to ensure that the integrity of the amendment to code is supported by both councillors, council and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coburn. Do we have questions? We do. Councillor Ring, please.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess when I look at the way the community engages with council currently, how do you imagine that the selection of speakers or the variation or the diversity of engagement will play out in terms of this notice of motion, with, I guess, the difficulty of presenting at a public forum and doing those different types of things, and I guess the ability to pose questions and have that networking. So, yeah.
A very multi-layered question, but I guess from the community's perspective, as I said, it's another opportunity to have a say. Sometimes the agenda items are very specific and we are only able to speak on a specific item. I'm lucky I can speak on two things today, which is fairly unique. Most people only speak on one item. Some people speak well. Their best way of communication is to verbalise things. They don't write things down. They don't use the internet. So verbalising things is the way for them to be able to get their opinion across. As I said, it's an opportunity for people to say really great things as well, to offer information to the council that they may not have considered that impacts us. It's the community being able to look back into the council and speak to the councillors rather than us reacting to what's given to us. It's an opportunity for us to instigate information, which is really, really important and should be welcomed.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor White has a question. Thank you.
Yeah. It's talked about a couple of questions, and also just in the discussions as well about there are existing methods for people to get access to council. You know, we can ring, you can send an email, you can blanket email all of us. There's various methods. What are your comments around the inclusivity of that and the ability to address this entire forum here? So you've got 3 directors, general manager, and 9 councillors in the room. So do you have a comment on this method as opposed to the current method about inclusivity and access?
It's a very good point. I myself personally have sent generic KSC, have had no response. I have followed that up with various other people within council, have been promised a response. Again, I have had no response. As far as sending out blanket information to all of the councillors, I get very little from that as well. And that's feedback that I've had from people as well. That's an individual decision that a councillor can make. You don't have to respond to everything that comes to you. But that's the perception that the public has, is that you are not being listened. So yes, this is a really valuable forum, because not only do you have the councillors who are here, you have the directors of the council and the general manager in a very organised and controlled manner, where an open discussion can be had, can be kept relevant, maintain its integrity, and just start an open conversation. I think it's a positive.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No, I thank you very much for your presentation, Ms.
Thank you.
And finally, but not least, Mr. Kyle Arnett is going to be speaking for 11.2, notice of motion, public forum and question time. Welcome, Mr. Arnett.
There we go. Fantastic. Figured out the button. All right. Thank you for having me. Good evening, all. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to the agenda item 11.2, notice of motion, public forum and question time. I believe that this notice of motion will start bridging the perceived distrust of council by allowing more community members to engage directly with the councillors and council staff. Not only will this allow residents to put forward more ideas and differing opinions on issues, but it will also assist councillors in making more informed decisions based on what is presented. I understand that there are currently provisions within the Code of Meeting Practice to allow more speakers, which is shown tonight and recently in the November and December 2023 ordinary meetings or public forums. With this said, the last review of the Code of Meeting Practice, according to the response on the agenda item, was 2018, so 6 years ago. Things have changed drastically in the community since then, and having additional speakers may help both the council staff, councillors and residents and ratepayers feel more connected. Although it is stated on the agenda item that public forums at council meetings are not an appropriate substitute for effective community engagement, it continues in the very next bullet point to say public forums should act as an input into council decision making, which is it. You have people from various community groups with vastly different points of view wanting to help council and councillors to see what the community wants and needs. I understand that what is being proposed may seem daunting, with the possibility of having 8 people per agenda item speaking, but that's not realistic. At any given public forum, you would not expect that many people to apply to speak, and if they have, the issue must fall under the high to very high level of impact as outlined in the 2023 Community Engagement Policy. There appears to be a continual trend of comparing Kempsey Shire Council to other councils of similar size. This needs to stop. It's like comparing apples to oranges. Different LGAs have different issues, different environments and different constituents. Why do we have to conform to what they do? Instead of trying to gag or deny the residents and ratepayers their right, not their privilege, their right to engage with council, look at the possibility of extending the public forum by half an hour to allow a bit of extra question time. Having the provision of people submitting questions prior to the meeting, as outlined in the notice of motion, will certainly help with keeping that extra time productive. To summarise, council continues to claim that community engagement is important and that some degree of input into decision making comes from the public forum. If you truly believe that, there should be no issue with this notice of motion. If you do take issue with this, however, I suggest you familiarise yourself with the 2023 KSC Community Engagement Strategy, where a promise is stated that we, you in this instance, will listen to and acknowledge the community's concerns and aspirations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Arnott. Do we have any questions? Councillor White, please.
Yes, please. And I just thought of this while you were speaking, is that people have different learning types. I mean, there's models around people's different learning, and those of you that are teachers should know that. So I sort of ask you a similar question that I asked before. I mean, what are your thoughts around efficiencies of having you standing there and present to us rather than us reading pages and pages of one-dimensional comments? So yeah, I mean, it's like, what are your thoughts around efficiency of people standing there and different learning types that we may experience as councillors? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So we'll see how I go with this. So in regards to the effectiveness, we've got all bar one councillor here, all bar one councillor in attendance, plus the council staff. If you have one person stand here and tell you one thing that you can write down, ask your questions, get your answers, would that not be more effective than sending an email to all the councillors, all council staff, and not getting anything back? That's brief.
To the point. Thank you very much. Councillor Ring, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I guess my question is, almost reiterated from Ms. Coburn, is that, how do we ensure that we're providing opportunity for diverse speakers in terms of who comes to speak at a public forum?
So let's just run the rhetoric of possibly extending the public forum back by half an hour. Yeah. So within half an hour, you could expect, I don't know, maybe half a dozen questions or something like that. It might not be all of them. It might not be every question that's put to you every time, but at least you've got that engagement there. You're answering 6 people who may not normally have the confidence to do something like this.
Yes, Councillor Ring.
You also mentioned that the community was gagged, and correct me if I'm not wrong, but during, because of the number of people that can speak on a public forum, but correct me if I'm wrong, but during the November public forum, more people were given the right to speak during that time. Would that not principally go against that?
Well, that was obviously a very different circumstance in regards to normal agenda items. That was something that's going to affect the entire of the community, whereas something like this is just starting to bridge that.
But in terms of our code of practice today, we can have 4, is it 4 against and 4 against? How does extending it to 8 in principle increase diversity, increase the amount of people that are going to come and speak here if we're just changing a number, and today we don't have even that amount reached?
So opening it up to 4 and 4 against would potentially even give people more confidence in coming and speaking for a start. So at the moment, as mentioned before, you've got 1 for and 1 against. Tonight it's different. You've got 2 for, no against. So there's got to be that little bit of, I suppose, wiggle room, I guess. I'm not very on top of all of this, and I'll openly admit that, but I feel that having the provision there to allow more people to speak is only going to do better when it comes to community engagement.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Oh, no, I didn't have a question. I just wanted a clarification. Does the code of conduct says 1 speaker for and 1 speaker against, not 2 for and 2 against?
At the present time, yes. Minimum. As you can see, the flexibility from the General Manager on allowing extras if necessary. Thank you. No other questions? If not, Thank you very much, Mr. Arnett. Yes, and I thank each person who's presented here today. It's as some people find it's quite formidable to stand up and speak in such a formal process. It's not like a normal conversation. So thank each of you. The General Manager would like to clarify a couple of points, please, before we close the public forum. Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, and look, thank you to the speakers in raising your concerns and your comments in relation to the two notices of motion. It is a dilemma that the councillors and the staff face because of the guidance that are actually provided by the Office of Local Government. And these are just some comments about some of the different points that are actually made by different speakers. In relation to general business, we're actually not allowed to actually have an item of general business on the agenda. The Office of Local Government and the Code specifically says the council must not consider business at a meeting of the council unless a councillor is given notice of the business as they're required, which is actually through a notice of motion or a question on notice, and unless that notice of the business has been sent to the councillors in accordance with clause 3.7, which means we have to give a minimum of 3 days. So we're not actually able to have items literally coming onto the floor as a general business item. We were actually prohibited from doing it. The other thing about motions from the floor, they're again not able to be actually accepted, and there's a very good reason for that, because you could have a motion come from the floor that the councillors then make a decision on, but the broader public has not had an opportunity to actually make comment on that, to actually have their input into it. It might be a decision that you and I might agree on, but 10 other people might disagree on. So having motions from the floor are again explicitly prohibited because of that exact reason. It denies the public access to actually have input into those decisions that really are getting councillors to make decisions on the run. There are, I think, a few of the councillors identified, and I think what we've continued to try and do here, and yeah, we don't always get it right, we know that, but certainly have a whole range of avenues for people to have input into. The council meeting, this public forum, is specifically about the business of the agenda. And again, that's something the Office of Local Government has made very, very clear. So the public forum is about having input into those specific decisions of council. It's not about other decisions we may make at some other time or whatever it is. It is about the agenda items that are on there. And they've also, the Office of Local Government in their circular in relation to IPR have actually made the comment that the council should have a comprehensive community engagement strategy in place to ensure the views of affected people in the community as a whole are considered in council decision making. This was, it's a statutory requirement. Public forums at council meetings are not an appropriate substitute for effective community consultation, and councils need to be mindful that their views expressed at public forums will not necessarily be representative views of other affected parties or the broader community. So that's again advice we got from the OLG. So the Code of Meeting Practice does restrict what we can actually do in this forum. Now that doesn't mean that the items raised by Councillor Baines and Councillor Wyatt cannot be addressed in another forum. And, you know, we've had the example of moving, you know, providing an extra 30 minutes to this public forum. Council could, and I've actually made a short comment in the GM comments on both these notice of motions, it could establish another forum, which was literally an open forum for people to come in and make any comment and to ask any questions. It just can't be associated with the formal council meeting. It could be for the hour before the public forum, for example. You could stay here at 3:30 and have that session, but it just can't be directly associated with the public council ordinary or extraordinary council meetings, because we're simply not able to do that because the restrictions are actually placed on it. So it's not really trying to stop the public from having that input. It just can't be done in the particular ways that are being suggested by the councillors at the moment. But it could be done literally the half hour or an hour before the public forum and just called something else. And we'd have to work out, as Councillor Wyatt outlined in hers, we'd have to work out all those details and how that might work. But that could actually be done. Yeah. You want to address that? Yeah, certainly if there's an urgent matter, either a mayor or a minute can be used as an urgent matter, or a councillor can actually say they've got a matter of urgent business, and then the council has to determine whether that business is urgent or not. And basically the determination of if it's urgent or not is, does it need a decision of council prior to the next council meeting? So if it needs a decision of the council prior to the next council meeting, it can be considered urgent. If it can be left to the next council meeting, then it's not urgent. But there are two avenues to get urgent business dealt with on the floor of council.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. And so I'll close this public forum, and I thank everyone for their attendance. And we certainly thank you for your input to our decisions tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. We'll have a 5-minute adjournment and